My name's Tim Luzader, and I have the pleasure of directing the Center for Career Opportunities on campus. And today's topic is going to be professional networking. So when we look at professional networking in terms of a Merriam-Webster dictionary definition, it talks about how important it is to have an exchange of information between people, between institutions, between groups. I think a more important part of that is the cultivation of productive relationships. So as students begin to think about networking, the good news for those in the Honors College at Purdue is there are a lot of ways to make those kinds of connections. It's just a very rich, resourceful environment for them. As a first step, though, before they get to know others, they need to know themselves. So we always encourage students to think about who they are, what's their personal brand, what are those attributes, and how can they present themselves in that way. Part of that is knowing what their skills and abilities are, not only what they currently are, but what do they aspire them to be, and how are they going to work on those skills and abilities. Another area relates to values. What are their personal values? How does that have an impact for the type of organization that they'll eventually be working with, whether it's in the private sector, whether it's more in a public sector, it might be within a university setting, hospital, but how does that relate to their personal values? Professional values is something else that's very important. So that is all part of that self-assessment. And then once students really get comfortable with who they are and what they're bringing, then it's the process of networking. So the very first thing to do is, who are they going to connect to? And I tell students the first place to start is family. Who is it within your own family that may be in a occupation or may be involved in some way that can be helpful to them and help not only inform them about what a particular occupation or industry involved, but also help them make the connections, which is networking. So it could be an uncle and aunt, it could be cousins. So starting with family is I think a good first step, and it's a good comfortable step. But then the second one is, what about friends of family? Who does a parent or a significant other know? How can they follow up with them there? Then let's go yet another step. What about the families of friends? It's families of maybe a roommate, maybe a classmate, maybe friends that you know with whom you can connect. The key part of this networking strategy is you have someone who can serve as that conduit to help make connections to those people. Some other folks to think about. It could be that you're working in a part-time job. What about some of the fellow students you're working with? What about the work supervisors? Are they people that could become part of your network and be very helpful to you? Are you involved in one of the registered student organizations on campus? Every year we have around 1,000, so there's a lot of choices there. Are there classmates you've gotten to know through that area? Are there advisors to that group? Let's look at the advising community. You have academic advisors, you have advisors within the Honors College, you have other kinds of advisors on campus, career advisors. So those are options as well. Not to mention, in the classroom, your professors, other kinds of instructors that you can connect to. So it really is a very rich environment for connecting to people with whom you would network. Next is, how do you connect with them? Certainly, if you're talking about people outside of campus, there are opportunities throughout the year. Alumni Weekend, Homecoming are examples of times that you can make those connections, especially if you're doing so with the help of others that may be aware of people you can connect with. If you have an interest from an employment point of view, there are many companies. As a matter of fact, it's not unusual for us to have right around 1,700 unique employers that are physically on campus every year, very large groups. Many of those companies will conduct information sessions that are much more informal opportunities to talk to people. There may be more formal interviews as well. Many of you may not be going right into the job market. You may be going to medical school or law school. We actually have a pre-professional advising office that will host a variety of activities that gives you a chance to talk to people within those areas as well. So that's another really rich way to make those connections as they visit campus. Many of the people in your network are already here. make time to see them, to set up an appointment within their campus offices. It could be it's within your academic departments. It could also be within some of these student service support areas, and of course, definitely the Honors College and people that you can meet with here as part of your networking strategy. Beyond the face-to-face network, there are other options. One in particular is, how do you use social media platforms? Probably the best known and the highest volume of people on a professional platform is LinkedIn. And if you don't already have a LinkedIn profile, I encourage you to set one up. And you can get help in doing that, certainly from the Center for Career Opportunities in Young Hall. But when you set up that profile, you essentially are making yourself available to people who can be very strong in your network. And you can also avail yourselves of the opportunity to join groups. The reason that's important is you can find people who have an affinity that is very important. For instance, if you happen to be an engineering student, there is a really active, large Purdue engineering alumni group, and they welcome current engineering students to join them. The advantage of being in a group when you're on LinkedIn is you have access to full profiles of the other group members. You can begin to filter based on what common affinities there are. If they're an alumni of Purdue and you're a Purdue student, that's a pretty strong affinity. But you can filter it down even further, relating to a specific major. Sometimes you can even glean a particular organization they work for where you may already have at least a family connection to. Sometimes you can do it geographically. You find a Purdue graduate with your same major that lives in your hometown, that's a really strong affinity. So utilizing that LinkedIn profile, especially from a social media standpoint, is really important. Become familiar with the term informational interview. You're not interviewing for a job, you're interviewing to glean information. Ultimately, you're interviewing to develop your personal network, someone who will be supporting you, potentially mentoring you, and helping you through this process. The good news is, when you present an informational interview, it's a very non-threatening, inviting opportunity for the participant, because you're not asking them for a job. You're not asking them for some kind of demand. You're actually asking to kind of pick their brain. You're not typically going to ask them to sit down for an hour with you. I oftentimes will encourage students, ask them if you can take them to coffee, or if you can take 15 minutes of their time to really begin to talk about and ask them questions about themselves. Chances are they'll take longer anyway because they'll enjoy the conversation. My last point is, while you're here at Purdue University, while you're here in the Honors College, you have convenient access to some great resources. And I talk to a lot of alums that one of the things they wish they had done better when they were a student is take advantage of all the resources that were here while they were here as students. So you heard my title. I oversee the Center for Career Opportunities. We're a comprehensive career center. So it's not unusual for freshmen to come in who aren't real sure about what career direction they want to go, what major will line up with that. So we have professional career counselors and coaches that can sit down with you on an individual basis and actually the self-assessment piece to help you with your skills, your values, your interests, and how that might relate. They have some instruments they can use to help measure that. There's no test smart enough to tell you what to do, but it can all be part of helping inform your decision making as you move forward. So taking advantage of that part of the CCO is important. Secondly, we teach a lot of workshops through our center, over 600 a year, and it's a variety of topics, everything from preparing your resume, how to interview effectively, even strategically how to work a job fair. We only had about 40 to 45 job fairs a year at Purdue, so there's lots of opportunity to make those connections. And then finally, we actually house the more formal interviewing. These aren't informational interviews, these actually are job interviews. We have a very large facility with 50 interview rooms, and there's a lot of that kind of formal interviewing taking place as well. A key point to know about the Center for Career Opportunities, it's not just those who are looking for work after college. The pre-professional advising office is part of our same facility. And for those of you who are thinking med school, law school, or other kinds of graduate school, full complement of services to help you be successful in that kind of pursuit. So the resources certainly within the CCO, elsewhere on campus, certainly within the Honors College, take advantage of those. We're really here, and what motivates us as professionals is the opportunity to talk to you and to be helpful to you and to enjoy seeing you succeed.